Hello, reporter room investigators. Come on in, come on in. Whew, this is going to be probably the biggest hearing that we have ever covered on this channel. Today is the day we are finally going to hear from Bryan Christopher Kohberger. He is going to be pleading guilty to doing away with Xana, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee, and also pleading guilty to burglary charges. Now, we are going to be talking about a variety of different things. The hearing is scheduled to begin in just a little bit. I just do want to show you that I have that up. And as soon as the hearing begins, I will stop talking and we will be focusing in on what the judge has to say and whether or not the judge is going to accept this plea deal is unknown. I think it's unlikely that he would reject it, but some of the family members, including Xana's family and Kaylee's family, are very, very upset. So the hearing is scheduled to begin at 1 p.m. And so I'll be taking you there a few minutes before, but I want to talk a little bit about the Gonzalez family statement. They are very, very unhappy. They posted this yesterday at 8:25 a.m. They said that the DP is merely an illusion in the criminal justice system. When available, it serves as a bargaining tool for the state, and when rarely applied, it's never enforced due to a highly inefficient appellate process. The notion that someone can plead guilty to a crime that still faces years of appellate delays reveals a systemic failure. The Latah County Prosecutor's Office's treatment of our family, this is from the Gonzalez family, Kaylee's family, during this process is something I wouldn't wish on anyone. We questioned decisions early in the investigation. Why was the mayor commenting on the case? Why was the coroner speaking to the families? Why was an officer with less than 2 years of experience leading the investigation? Why was the University of Idaho involved when they declared it an isolated off-campus incident? And we have talked at length during the live stream that I did on the WSU and the University of Idaho and how much power they have in these college towns. The Gonzaleses continue. Why was the university permitted to write a book about the incident while others were silent under an overly broad order? And they're talking about the gag order. And initially, the gag order not only silenced the witnesses, they silenced the family members of the victims. Let that sink in. Your family members done away with, and you're being told by a court system that you're not allowed to talk about it. That was absolutely ridiculous. As a result, we were branded adversaries. So it was no shock how the Latah County Prosecutor's Office mishandled the plea deal. They vaguely mentioned a possible plea deal on Friday without seeking our input and presented the plea on Sunday. Latah County should be ashamed of its prosecutor's office. 4 wonderful young people lost their lives, yet the victims' families were treated as opponents from the outset. We weren't even called about the plea. We received an email with a letter attached. That's how Latah County Prosecutor's Office treats murder victim families. Adding insult to injury, they're rushing the plea, giving families just 1 day to coordinate and appear at the courthouse for the plea, which will be today, July 2nd. And we'll be going to that in just a few minutes. The hearing is scheduled to start at 1 p.m., so we're going to do a pre-show. Who do they think they are? After more than 2 years, this is how it concludes, with a secretive deal and a hurried effort to close the case without any input from family members, from victims' families on the plea details. And I do understand their concerns on this. Let me know if you have a different opinion, and please come on in and tell me where you are from. But I can understand why they feel like this. We don't know if Bryan Kohberger is going to give specifics of where he put the knife. We don't know if he's going to give specifics on what his motive was. And I think this is something that the victim's family members do have a right to know. They need to know where he put the knife, why he selected their family members. But let's continue on with the Gonzalez statement. I do think this is a very powerful statement. After more than 2 years, this is how it concludes, with a secretive deal and a hurried effort to close the case without any input from the victims' families on the pleas details. Our family is frustrated right now, and that will subside, and we will come together as always and deal with the reality that we face moving forward. Once again, we thank everyone for their thoughts and prayers. So and then we have this, which I don't know if you guys saw this, but I found this to be very, very disturbing. Let me know if you have a different take on it. But Dr. Ramsland spoke out. Let me just quickly just say, I want to do CYA myself. I don't want to get myself in any trouble. Come on in. Tell me where you are from. My name is Jessica Della Davies. I'm an investigative journalist, and my job is to investigate crimes, crime scenes, and potential suspects, and share with you how to do the same thing. If you have not subscribed to Reporter Room, it's free. And this is just the beginning of the end on the Bryan Kohberger case. We still have all of the discovery to go through together, and we're going to have a lot of more information pouring in over the next few months as this gag order is lifted, as Bryan Kohberger is sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility for parole, and also no ability to appeal. So please consider subscribing, hit the notification. Subscribing is free, and it helps me out a lot. I can't get to 50,000 subscribers without your help. So come on in, tell me where you're from, whatever you want to share. Are you from, you can tell me the country, the continent, the state, the province, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. But I just want to do a quick poll before we go. The hearing is scheduled to start in 25 minutes. As soon as the hearing starts, I will immediately stop talking. I will be communicating with you guys in the top chat. So if you're watching, come and join me in the top chat. So I think it's absolutely appalling. And I want to do a poll on this, if you agree or disagree. I think it's absolutely appalling that Bryan Kohberger and Ann Taylor were willing just a couple of days ago to point the finger at 4 innocent people who are alternative suspects. They wanted to name other people as alternative suspects. And then when they couldn't do that, they turned around and agreed to plead guilty. So she knew he did it. He of course knows that he did it. But how do you feel about the fact that they were willing to throw 4 innocent people under the bus? If you think that that was okay, it's, all is fair in love and war, put a 1 in the chat. Or put fair, just put fair. I think that's easier. Put fair if you think all is fair in love and war. If you think that this was not right, what they did, that it was not the right thing to do, it was unethical to try to name 4 innocent people, then put a not fair in the chat. And I just kind of want to see where we are as a Reporter Room family on this. So we're going to talk about Dr. Ramsland, because there's been a lot of talk about the fact that Idaho does not have a son of Sam law. And what I mean by this is that Bryan Kohberger can do a book deal. Now, the family is going to get money, but it looks like he's going to be allowed to do, at least the way it is right now, unless the prosecution's done something that we are not aware of. It appears that Bryan Kohberger is going to be able to cash in with a book deal. And Dr. Ramsland, his former professor, well, I'll let her speak for herself. Let me know really quick if you can hear this.
Renowned forensic psychologist, Dr. Kathleen Ramsland.
Could you hear that? Just really a quick yes or no? Just a quick yes or no if you could hear that, okay? I just don't want to play the whole thing and then find out you guys couldn't hear it. Yes? Oh, Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Njaz. Njaz is our head mod. Thank you for modding today, Christy. All right, let me see. I see my mods here. Patricia, Njaz, thank you for modding. Thank you, Smiley Paws. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Christine. Any other mods in the chat? Las Vegas Girl is here. Thank you so much for modding today. Okay, and Brother Mike is here. Not fair is a snake. All right, so let's see what you guys think. If you think it's fair, just put fair. If you think it's not fair, put not fair, or 2 is fine too. Not fair, not fair, not fair. I just thought this was tight. Thanks for modding today, Tara. Not fair, not fair. Thanks for modding today, Donna. Not fair, not fair, not fair. Okay, so pretty much nobody thinks that was like ethical to go to impugn the integrity of 4 innocent people. And when they, and then turn around and ask for a plea deal when they are not allowed to do that. And thank goodness the judge did not allow that. Dee said unethical and bad. Yeah, I agree. I don't think that, it was ethical to do that. So everybody's in agreement here that this is just not that was just not right. And just imagine if you were one of the 4 people that happened to survive this, and you're going to have this, I feel, I think Ann Taylor, is to do her job, which is to defend Bryan Kohberger, but not to the point. And I just feel like she crossed a line somewhere in this and her desire to want to win. And the line was crossed when she was willing to impugn the integrity of somebody who's innocent. So, but here's Dr. Ramsland. And I'm not blaming her if she wants to cash in on a book deal. She's certainly entitled to do that. But, I just would, love to have you guys listen for yourself and see what you guys think about this. Because it appears that Bryan Kohberger is probably going to be writing a book. It doesn't seem like there's any laws or anything in the plea deal that we know about that's going to stop him from writing the book. And his former professor, Dr. Ramsland, is already talking about the fact that she wants to write a book.
As you may know, she was Bryan Kohberger's professor and advisor at DeSales University in Pennsylvania. She has not spoken publicly about Bryan Kohberger until now. She's been on this show talking about other cases, but she's been very, very careful not to talk about Kohberger because of the trial, because she was going to be a witness at the trial, and she now feels comfortable to open up to us. And we've got so many questions, Dr. Ramsland, that I've got so many questions I've wanted to ask you for so long. I want to start with, how did you first meet Bryan Kohberger? What classes of yours was he in?
Okay, I want to be just clear that I'm still within the FERPA limitations that protect students and student information. So I will talk within that. I met him in the fall of 2018 when he came to DeSales University. He had an associate's degree and he was going to get into our 4-year program as a psychology major. He selected the forensic track, which made him an advisee for me because I managed the forensic track. And he was also in my class that semester.
And Dr. Ramsland talks about FERPA. I should have mentioned that there's a law, it's a federal law, I believe, that she is not allowed to talk about certain aspects of a student, their grades, certain parts of their academic life. It's almost like a HIPAA. So she's going to tell us what she can, but unless Bryan Kohberger signs off, she's legally not allowed to talk about certain elements of his academic career. So just keep that in mind if there's some things that Dr. Ramsland can't answer. What was your perception of him?
He seemed like eager to be in the classroom. He was polite. He was respectful, intense, and curious. And there was no reason for me to think that he was anything other than someone who was really interested in this potential career.
So just keep in mind that she's saying that she picked up on nothing, but she's in a minute going to talk about the reason that she wants to do this book is so they can and the reason that she spent 5 years writing a book with BTK, Dennis Rader, is so that, we can spot these guys in the future. But this this person was literally in her classroom. I'm not blaming her in it by any means, but should he be writing a book deal? Is this fair to the family members that he's going to be allowed to write a book deal? Think of all the attention he's going to get from her and all that narcissistic supply. I think he's a psychopath, and most psychopaths are narcissists. Not all narcissists are psychopaths. This is just my opinion, and opinions are not facts. But I think he's got psychopathic traits. He's going to plead guilty to doing this, but she's, willing to write a book with him. And I just think for him, this is all the attention that he wanted. Remember, this man never said he didn't do it. He never said, I'm not guilty. He stood silent.
Was there anything looking back now that was strange about him or that you noticed?
When I look back, there really isn't anything that stood out to me. I think when you're a teacher, your instinct is to accept students at face value. You don't, start with suspicions or, and there really weren't any red flags. He was always really quite respectful and grateful. He would thank me for things. He was attentive. He would do the work. I didn't have any concerns.
I think it was 4 classes that you taught him in. What were those classes?
There were 3 undergraduate courses in the forensic track that I taught, and he was in all of them. Well, one was Introduction to Forensic Psychology. Another was my death investigation class, which was called Psychological Sleuthing. And the third one was called Dangerous Minds, the Psychology of Antisocial Behavior. And
so she had him in multiple classes. And even after all this research that she did with BTK and Dennis Rader, she wasn't able to pick him out. So that's where I kind of say, if you want to write a book, that's fine. Just say, I want to write a book about it because I'm interested in it. But don't try to pretend that it's research. I'm not saying she shouldn't write a book. Of course she should. And, but I don't think this is going to be, I just don't think that the reason for writing the book is to help people be able to spot people. Because if that was the purpose, then wouldn't she have picked up on something from when she spent 5 years helping BTK write a book? And maybe one way to help, squelch behaviors like this is to, not give these guys a platform to write a book. But let me know if you have a different feeling.
Then he got into the graduate program in criminal justice for a master's degree. And he took a course with me called Behavioral Criminology.
Is there anything, Dr. Ramsland, when you look back and you think about the curriculum of those classes, and not getting into his specific experience, but when you think about what you taught in those classes that you think, oh my gosh, he may have used that in what he's now accused of doing here in Idaho?
Well, the antisocial behavior course involves serial killers and mass murderers, and we do a lot of case analysis. I use two books that I wrote. One was written with the BTK killer, whom you just mentioned, and his decision process and the crimes and how he thought about them and felt about them, and what was it like for him, to be caught.
So Bryan Kohberger is going to love this. He can talk about what, he can relive his whole thing over this while she writes this book with him. She spent 5 years writing the book with BTK. Is she going to spend 5 years writing, a book or books with Bryan Kohberger? He's going to be able to relive this over and over in his mind. And this is where I just feel like, is there some type of stopgap? And I guess we'll find out during the hearing today that prevents him from being able to cash in on a book deal. I think the money will end up, being litigated out and hopefully go to families, victims, but I don't think he should be allowed to write any book deal. And maybe they have made this part of the plea deal and we just don't know, but I think it's disturbing that we're, and I'm not saying in relation to this, to Dr. Ramsland. I think she's perfectly lovely. I just don't think it's right that he gets to cash in on a book deal for doing away with people.
That's a very intense book. And also I have one called The Mind of a Murderer, which was about various behavioral experts over the past century who interviewed killers, mass murderers, and serial killers to get as close as possible, spending a lot of time with them to get as close as possible to their process of becoming a criminal. And so he would have been exposed to that. I think some of the, now looking back, I would look at maybe some of the things that interested him as being, something that gives me pause. But we always have to think about, we all know, everyone in this field, forensic psychology and criminology, know that we could have students who might become offenders. But we also know that the vast majority of our students will not, and will instead go into a field like law enforcement, FBI, Secret Service, that make the world better, that protect us. So we know that there's always a risk that we're attracting somebody who wants to do something terrible.
And the same thing in the true crime community. So that's why I'm not blaming Dr. Ramsland at all. But I'm just, thinking from a plea deal point of view. I do think that this, should have been included and maybe it was, and we just haven't heard about it yet. But I didn't see anything from the family members that they were told that he couldn't cash in and do a book deal. And the fact that she's, willing to do a book deal is, fine for her, but I don't think it's fair to the family members. I really don't. Let me know if you have a different take on it. But I just wanted to play you a little bit of that. I'll link it for you in the description below. I am going to go over to the hearing because, of course, that's why we are all here. And I just want to put that up on the camera on the off chance that they decide to go early today. Once the hearing starts, I will be moving myself down into a low position and be silent on that. But I'm just curious what you guys think. Should Bryan Kohberger be allowed to cash in on a book deal? Yes or no? Let's just find out what you guys think about this. I'm like petting my hair while I'm thinking about this. I'm really stressed at the idea that he could do this. Cynthia says no. And Mike says no. We're just waiting for the judge. So So I do want to welcome Linda Pullen as a brand new Reporter Room channel member and Mary Nelson as a brand new Reporter Room channel member. Welcome to the family. Wendy Engler as a brand new Reporter Room channel member. Thank you so much for joining the Reporter Room family. I'm glad you guys are here. We do, for some people feel like this case is over. I disagree. Now that the gag order is lifted, a ton of information is going to come pouring out, and it's going to take probably a couple of months to go through everything and to get all of the discovery released. We'll get to see the body cam footage of when law enforcement first responded to the scene. We'll be able to, find out the details of what happened to these 4 victims. We'll be able to, within limits. I'm not showing anything graphic on this channel. But we'll be able to at least find out, what happened, what the order is. We don't know the order of how it happened. We'll hopefully get to find out the motivation, the real reason. We'll get to see the Hyundai Elantra. That's 12 hours of footage right there. So, that's a lot to go through. I want to say thank you to Mike for the $1.99 super sticker. Thank you so much. I am putting that toward a new camera for the channel. And I want to thank NJazz for gifting a Reporter Room membership. For those of you that don't know, Brother Mike and NJazz are our head mods. So thank you very much. And thank you, Donna Bravo, for the 99-cent super sticker. I'll be putting that toward a new camera for the channel. So thank you so much for that. And Vicky, thank you for the $2 super sticker. She said, Idaho law does not allow Bryan Kohberger to profit, but Dr. Ramsland can. She can. Thank you so much for that, Vicky G. And my understanding is there is going to be a restitution. Oh, here we go. He's getting ready. Let me go ahead and he is getting ready. All right. So we just saw the first change. Let me just fix my own little thing here because I like it to be down here just like a little tiny little box. It's not blocking anything. They have like a little opening on either side of the thing. And let me just move my camera down too. It's not on camera all the way. Okay. All right. So I just curious what you guys, so even, I just, my thought process about the book deal is, I just really feel like, um, he's going to get a lot of narcissistic supply from that. He's going to get a lot of attention from that. And I feel like, I don't think that's fair. I just don't think that's fair. And once this hearing starts, I just want you guys to know I'm not going to talk. If you want to talk to me, you have to come up to the top chat because I don't talk during the hearings. I absolutely hate it when I'm watching court and somebody is talking when I'm trying to watch it. So I'm quiet when I'm watching it. I just thought it would be nice if we could watch it together as a reporter room family. So I want to thank Joanne for the $5 super sticker. Thank you so, so much. And then afterwards, we'll do a wrap up on the show. So get your popcorn, get comfortable, because we're going to be here for a little bit. And this is the first time that we've heard Bryan Kohberger, because remember, he did not say, I'm not guilty. He stood silent. So Bryan Kohberger has never, ever denied that he did this. And some of you guys asked me, well, what's going to happen when some of the people, thank you so much, Lil B. Thank you so much. I will be putting that toward the, I'll be putting that toward the camera that I'm saving up for. And thank you, Joanne. I'll be putting that toward the camera. So thank you so much to both of you. I really am grateful for that. That's really, really kind. And then once we get, so I just feel like Sunflower says, look, even if it was the DP, he would still get attention. So it doesn't really matter. That's true. That's true. I'm just like, but he wouldn't maybe have, 5 years like BTK did to write a book. And then, the other thing is we could have gone all the way to trial. And, because he got this autism diagnosis, which a lot of people have questioned. And I just want to say that people who are autistic are no more likely to commit a crime like this than people who are not autistic. So there's no more likelihood. So I don't think this is autistic. If he is autistic alone, I think this would be probably combined with some type of antisocial personality traits as well. And I'm not diagnosing him. I'm not a mental health professional. This is just my feeling. Esmeralda said, thank you to ever gifted me the channel membership. I believe that was NJazz gifted that. So thank you, NJazz. And Jilly, thank you. Jilly Jill, thank you so much for the $10 super sticker. Much appreciated. I'll be putting that toward a camera. And so it will be going to good use. All right. So I wanted to, while we're waiting for the judge, I'm just going to talk about a couple of other things. I'm not moving away from that though, because as soon as it starts, obviously I'm going to go silent and we're going to watch this together. But legal analysts have branded the plea deal as a disgrace. I think it's a mixed bag. I think for the witnesses, like the DoorDash driver, Molly and Dylan and Bethany, who have been dragged, I think for them, it's a positive thing. And some of the family members, like Ethan Chapin's family, also supports this. But maybe the way that it all went down, this is Phil Holloway. He's an attorney. He said that this plea deal is a disgrace. The prosecutors have no honor or respect for the families of these kids. To cut a deal with Kohberger without consulting the families in a meaningful way victimizes these poor people. We may never get the why of it all. And then Representative Don Bacon also spoke out against the plea deal. He said, I share the victims' families' frustrations. Capital punishment was tailor-made for murderers like him. And then we have Ethan Chapin's family is on board with it. And we haven't heard from Maddie's father. I think but her mom and stepfather are both in favor of the plea deal. And the plea deal does include the fact that he cannot appeal. So it will not subject the families to rounds and rounds of an appeal. But there was a petition that was launched to petition the judge to reject the plea deal. Now, I don't know if this would be overstepping on his part because the I think prosecution has the leeway on that. But he does have some, and an Idaho resident named Jason Verbeck did garner signatures. And he wrote on his petition that the Idaho 4 case has captured national attention, becoming a symbol of the urgent need for justice and accountability. Bryan Kohberger, who was apprehended and charged with these crimes, should be tried by a jury of his peers where all the evidence is thoroughly examined in the public eye. Accepting a plea deal not only circumvents this process, but may imply leniency in a situation where the public demands transparency and justice. So I think this plea deal is a mixed bag. I think it's a good thing for Dylan and for Bethany. I think putting them through a trial would have been stressful, and half the family members also feel like they just want to move forward. But the other half of the family members, and I'm just wondering if it's the plea deal itself, or the fact that they just didn't feel like they were included in on the process, that's been so upsetting for a lot of family members. And I have to imagine from the judge's point of view, he's got to be feeling some pressure when you have a representative from your state and you have members, and he's an elected judge, getting a petition together. But I do think it would be unusual for him to reject it, but he ultimately could, or he could ask for a couple of more things to be added into the plea deal. Like Bryan Kohberger has to allocate to where this happened. Where did he put the knife? Why did he choose these victims? How long was he aware of the victims? Was he following them? Was he stalking them? We'll be to find out a lot about the cell phone pings and the geofencing over the next couple of months as more information is released. I will continue to cover this case. I know there's a lot of questions, and this would really help me out as a journalist if you guys would share any questions that you do have in this. I'm just going to refresh because we're just waiting for the judge now. We know they're there because it clicked over. So the hearing is scheduled to begin now, but it's always run a couple minutes late on every hearing that we've done. One of the victims' family said they welcomed this deal. They want to put this behind them. This was Ben Mogan. This was Maddie Mogan's father. He said, we can actually put this behind us and not have these future dates and future things that we don't want to have to be at, that we should be at, that have to do with this terrible person. We get to just think about the rest of our lives and to have to try and figure out how to do it without Maddie and the rest of the kids. Ben Mogan added that he believed that justice would be served by Bryan Kohberger spending the rest of his life behind bars. He said, if you get that quick DP, capital punishment, you don't have to spend decades thinking about how terrible you made the world. And Bryan Kohberger most likely will be put in protective custody, which means he'll be locked down 23 hours a day. He'll be let out for 1 hour a day and probably go outside 2 or 3 times a week. But I did share with you how upset the family members of Kaylee Gonzalez were. Family victim of the family of Xana Kernodle were reportedly furious over the plea deal. An aunt of Xana's slammed prosecutors' decision to accept a plea deal that will allow Bryan Kohberger to serve life in prison without the possibility of parole instead of capital punishment. Kim Kernodle said that the prosecutors had told them they agreed to the deal to, quote, spare the families a painful trial. But she said that her family and the Gonzalez family wanted to see Bryan Kohberger stand trial for the murders and had made it clear that they weren't interested in a deal. She said, we know the graphics were not there. They were not trying to spare us. So, it's going to be interesting to see what the judge decides. And then Phil Holloway, who's an attorney, said that, he felt like the evidence against Bryan Kohberger was overwhelming, and they cut this deal without the blessing of the families of the victims. These prosecutors should be run out of town. So definitely some very mixed feelings from everybody. A lot of feelings around this case. And we're just waiting on the judge. So What do you guys think about this? Let's do a couple of comments. Please give this a thumbs up. Help me out with the algorithm, pretty please. It lets YouTube know I'm doing a wholesome show as much as I can, covering true crime, of course. Hey, Celine, it's good to see you in the top chat today. Jennifer said 2 victim families that are against the plea deal are the 2 victims that were awake and fought with everything they had to get away and to live. What they experience is beyond words. Yeah. Cynthia said, do you think if questioned, Bryan Kohberger would tell the truth? That's a great point. Tara says Diddy's is supposed to start. I already know how his worked out. He was found guilty on like a lesser charge, but found not guilty on the rest. So I hate to spoil it for those of you that were going to watch that next, but I just, and that's the thing with the trial. You can think you have a great case, and then the jury gets stuck. And in this case, Diddy was found not guilty. So I'm just refreshing. We're just waiting for the judge to get started. I don't see anybody else with it either. So I am just waiting on the judge. Let's see. I'm just checking to see, does anybody else have a live stream where they're live? Nope, they're also all in a holding pattern. So we're fine. We're just waiting on the judge to get started, and then we will get to find out more about this. And maybe we'll all feel better after we watch this together. I know there's been a lot of feelings about this. And so maybe we'll just all feel relieved once we, have a sense of how this is all going to play out. Let's see. Let me check in with chat. Thank you so much for joining me today. Yeah, and no matter how you guys feel, I know people have different feelings about this. Just please, share what you want to say. Have your say. We're not all going to agree on every single case. Like I'm covering the Lori Vallow case right now. Not everybody is in agreement, but you can share your opinions and still be respectful with each other. We're not in a year from now, we're going to be talking about a different case, and we may not all agree on that one either, and it's okay. Bob says he thinks the family should have been consulted. Well, apparently they were consulted, but I guess the feeling was I don't think they realized that there was like an actual, because of course the prosecutors don't want the family members to leak this to the press if they're upset. But so it sounds like they kind of like worked it in with other things to try to take a temperature of what they felt like. Maddie, Kaylee, Ethan, and Xana, rest in peace from Brother Mike. Tara says, yeah, he was found not guilty, and I think he's probably going home today. So that can happen too. You could feel like as a prosecutor you have a great case, and then apparently there was like one juror that was struggling with the verdict, and one juror or a couple of jurors can derail your whole thing. So just because they were going to trial doesn't automatically mean that they were going to get a guilty verdict. History said there's no hierarchy of who's all four were horrible and unfair. Of course. Yes, of course. I agree. Donna said, I called the number and emailed the judge. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, and if you feel really strongly about it, the Gonzalez's do have up on their family page a way to, email. I'm not encouraging anyone to harass anyone. I just want to make that clear. Please don't do anything, that you don't think is God, and act with integrity like you always do. And Mike, thank you so much for the $1.99 super sticker. That is so nice of you. Thank you so much. I'll be putting that toward the camera. Northman girl, thank you so much for the $10 super sticker. That is so nice of you. I am very grateful. Thank you so much. And Tara says $4.99 for the camera fund. Thank you so much, Tara. This is really nice of you. And Ellen says $4.99. Thank you so much, Ellen. I'm very grateful. Thank you. Susan is 5 pounds super sticker. Thank you so much to Susan Lawton for that. Very kind of you. Esmeralda, thank you for the $9.99 super sticker. She says, Jess, crime busting queen, you and your epic mods rock. Here's towards saving that for that camera. You can snoop in style. Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you, Esmeralda. Thank you. And thank you to Michelle for the $5 super sticker. And that's Michelle Mikey. I love reading your comments. Thank you so much. So we're just waiting on the judge. I have been checking in to see if anybody else is getting a feed, and nobody else has a feed either. So I just want to reassure you of that. That we are all just waiting. We are all just waiting. Yep, I see everybody's just waiting on this. So I don't know what the holdup is. It could be the judge, got those messages and emails. And, maybe there's some talk going on behind the scenes. Maybe the judge wants to know what the nature of this plea deal is and what Bryan Kohberger is going to actually allocate to. What's he going to admit to? And is it going to be enough? We also have word that Bryan Kohberger's family members are coming to the hearing today. So his mother, Marianne, and his father, Michael, are both supposed to be at the hearing. I don't know if his sisters, Amanda and Melissa, will be coming or not. A lot of people have wondered, what precipitated or motivated Bryan Kohberger to take this plea deal. I'll just give you my opinion. My opinion is that it was probably a couple of things. I think that it may have been finding out that the DoorDash driver saw Bryan, combined with the fact that the judge refused to allow Ann Taylor to implicate 4 innocent people. We know they're innocent because Bryan Kohberger is pleading guilty. He's taking responsibility and saying that he did it. Do I think it's because he suddenly turned into a good guy? No, I do not. I think that he is doing this because, this is, he doesn't want to have the same fate that he subjected his victims to. That's my opinion. But I think that once he realized that capital punishment wasn't being taken off the table, and Ann Taylor tried everything, and once he realized that the alternative perpetrator theory that dog wasn't going to hunt with this particular judge, he wasn't going to let Ann Taylor implicate 4 innocent people. And then, he just felt like, well, I want to live. And I also am wondering, just let me know if you have a different feeling on this, but I'm wondering if maybe his parents, when they saw the Dateline NBC episode and they saw what he was into watching, which was non-consensual essay, that's what he was, looking up and watching. They saw that he had, pictures of the victim's friends, all these young women from WSU and University of Idaho on his phone. They saw him, dressed up as Ted Bundy. And then those 3 phone calls that he made back to his parents' house came out. And I'm wondering if they took a look at that and thought, oh my gosh, and, thinking back on that phone conversation, maybe at the time it didn't, raise any alarms. Or, maybe I told you guys I wanted to know when this road trip with Michael Kohberger was planned. That's another question. Write down what your questions are, or drop me a comment as to what your questions are. So I can start looking for the answers for you guys. I'm just checking other sources besides ours. Nobody has this feed. So we are waiting on the judge. And so is everybody else. So is everybody else. So we're all kind of in the same boat. So hopefully we'll get something going here in a couple of minutes. The family members are arriving, and we'll look at them arriving in just a few minutes. We'll look at that. If we have a break this morning, or this afternoon, depending what time zone you're in. And if we have a break, we'll look at that. And if not, we'll look at the family members arriving after, and just kind of see, who was where. Joan says, Judge seems to be sensitive to how the internet was treating Dylan and Bethany. I think he will make BK reveal everything to accept the plea. And that may be why we have a holding pattern. Hey, Holly. Smiley pause. Dab says, the families only had one day to get there for court. Not fair. And maybe they are waiting for family members. That could be also. People are trying to get there. I would think that a lot of people would have left last night and to come in today. Tiger Beat says, Steve Gonzalez says he's not going inside. It sounds like the Kohberger family flew in before the families knew about the plea deal. I wondered if it was the Kohbergers that's who leaked it to Bryan Enton. It could have been a victim's family member, but I'm wondering if it was Bryan Kohberger's family. Because Bryan Enton also knew that Bryan Kohberger.
General Stephen Hitler, presiding judge.
Let me see that. All right, this is CR 0124316665. Defendant is present in custody with counsel, Ms. Thompson, Ms. Jennings, and Ms. Taylor, Ms. Massoff, and Ms. Barlow. The state's present with Mr. Thompson, Mr. Horowitz, Ms. Jennings, and Mr. Nye is here as well. Am I miss anybody? I'm sorry.
Ms. Allen is here as well.
Ms.
Your
Allen
Honor.
is here as well. Very well, thank you. All right, we are here today to entertain a change of plea. Before I start, I want to address some issues of concern and otherwise. First, I appreciate everybody in attendance today being on their best behavior. Please, no outbursts or demonstrations. Any such conduct will result in immediate removal and may result in an inability to attend further court proceedings in this case. I want to point out that there have been calls by some for the public to contact me and my office in an attempt to influence my decision-making in this case. This has been extraordinarily disruptive for court staff and the ability for them to get work done, not only in this case, but in other cases where defendants are entitled to have their cases processed, and frankly, as important, if not more so, for victims to have their cases processed in those cases. It's also highly inappropriate. A court is not supposed to, and this court will never take into account public sentiment in making an opinion regarding its judicial decisions in cases. Courts should, and I always will, make decisions based on where the facts and the law lead me. Period. I have not read any of the numerous messages nor listened to any of the numerous voicemails that have been sent to me and my staff. Those have all been forwarded to security and, where appropriate, to law enforcement. I ask that you not continue to mount such campaigns or to send me information like this because, again, it is not appropriate and frankly not something I would take into account when deciding a matter in a case like this. I also want people to understand some very basic concepts about the ideas of separation of powers, what the court's duties are, and what the duties and the rights of the executive, or in this case, the prosecuting attorney, is. The executive, the elected prosecutor, is the sole authority in deciding what charges to pursue, including whether, as well as what penalties to ask for, and what penalties to pursue, including the death penalty. This court cannot require the prosecutor to seek the death penalty, nor would it be appropriate for this court to attempt to do that. This court, in considering a plea agreement, if it were to reject this plea agreement, cannot force the state to seek the death penalty. My role and power in considering a plea agreement is extremely limited. My role is to ensure that the defendant's plea is given freely, voluntarily, and intelligently. If those things are met, I can only reject a plea, such as the one in this case, where I'm not being asked to agree to the sentence in advance. I can only reject it, for example, if the defendant does not meet or admit to all of the elements of the crime. That is, I can ensure what is called a factual basis to the plea. Finally, I want to offer my apologies to all the families, including the victims' families, the families of the defendant, for the short notice for today's hearing, and I'm sure what must have been the hurried efforts to get here. I, like most everyone else, learned of this plea agreement Monday afternoon and had no inkling of it beforehand. Prior to that time, I was under the belief that this case was proceeding to trial, as had been indicated, and my staff and I were busy continuing to work on preparations to have potentially 10,000 citizens of Ada County come to jury duty starting in mid-July, with the questionnaire process in mid-July. It was, once I learned of the defendant's decision to change his plea in this case, it was important that I take the plea as soon as possible because of the extraordinary administrative efforts that were otherwise attendant to the process of this, getting this trial potentially underway on time, and including the significant process of bringing, again, potentially up to 10,000 jurors to come in and fill out juror questionnaires prior to the beginning of the voir dire process. And so it was important that we, if we're going to go down this road, do so expeditiously so that we can avoid those costs and expenses associated with that. Otherwise, if it was not going to result in a plea, or if for some reason the plea were to fall through today, that we could continue diligently towards trial at the time specified. And so that obviously required that we act quickly. And so some folks may have not had the amount of time that we would otherwise allow for them to travel here. And so again, I apologize for that. I want to make people aware that during the hearing, if you are to leave the courtroom for any reason, you will not be readmitted during the hearing. Also, when we finish the hearing this morning, I ask that the public and media wait in their seats until the victims' families and the defendants' families and others are escorted out of the courtroom before you start to leave. Finally, I want to acknowledge the trial court administrator and her staff, the Ada County Sheriff, and the Ada County 4th District Marshal Service for the huge lift that they've accomplished in preparing for and orchestrating this hearing today, as well as to all the security attendant today that you see, and some of whom you, many of whom you don't see, with less than 48 hours notice. And so I appreciate the hard work that they've been doing Frankly, some of them while they were on some vacation prior to the trial starting and had to call that short. And so I appreciate very much their professionalism and dedication. All right. That said, let's move to the business of today. I understand the state and the defense have reached a plea agreement in this case. For the record, I have a written plea agreement which indicates in sum, the defendant will plead guilty to all 5 counts in the indictment, burglary, felony, and first-degree murder, 4 counts. The state and the defendant stipulate, that is, that the defense is not free to argue for a lesser sentence at sentencing to the following. The defendant on the burglary charge will be sentenced to 10 years fixed, and that the defendant on counts 2 through 5, the 4 counts of first-degree homicide, on each count would receive a fixed life sentence, all 5 of those counts to run consecutive to one another. Defendant, as part of the plea agreement, waives his right to appeal, as well as his right to appeal the sentence and his right to seek leniency or reconsideration of the sentence under Idaho Criminal Rule 35. This is not a Rule 11 agreement, meaning the court is not bound by the plea agreement and could impose a different lawful sentence at sentencing. The stipulated agreement between the parties is the maximum on each count. So theoretically, the only thing the court could do would be a lesser sentence at sentencing. But the defendant is not free to ask the court to do so under the plea agreement. Are there any other material terms of the plea agreement that the parties would like to make? Obviously, the plea agreement, the written plea agreement will speak for itself and be part of the court record.
Not from the state, Your Honor. Thank you.
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, very well. All right. Ms. Taylor, have you had sufficient time to discuss this case and all of its ramifications with your client?
I have, Your Honor.
Have you discussed fully with him his rights, defenses, and possible consequences to him of the guilty plea?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have you been able to do all the discovery you feel necessary?
Yes, Your Honor.
And have you informed your client of the importance of providing the court truthful and accurate answers in taking this plea today?
I have.
Have you apprised your client of any and all offers and counter offers and answered his questions about those?
Yes,
Do you consent to the entry of the plea today?
I do.
All right, Mr. Kohberger, I need to ask you some questions this afternoon, or I guess it's this morning still. I do this to ensure that so that I am assured that you understand the nature of the charges to which I understand you're going to plead guilty, as well as the possible consequences to you of your guilty pleas. I want to make sure your plea is given voluntarily, and I want to make sure that you actually committed the crimes to which you're pleading guilty, because I don't want you to plead guilty to a crime you didn't commit. If you attempt to plead guilty today, but for some reason I don't accept your plea, then it is possible that your statements today could be used against you later at trial. Do you understand that?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And now, while you're standing, actually, why don't you take the oath from the clerk?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in the matter not proceeding before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, and Mr. Kohberger, just to make it easier, you don't need to stand when you speak to me. I appreciate the sign of respect, but for convenience, you can remain seated, all right? Before I start asking you questions today, have you consumed substantive questions? Let me ask you, have you consumed any alcohol, drug, or other intoxicating substance that would impair your ability to understand or exercise reasonable judgment?
No.
You feel like you are thinking clearly today?
Yes.
All right, I want you to understand what the possible penalties are for each of the crimes to which I understand you're going to offer a guilty plea today. They include on count 1, the burglary, a fine of up to $50,000 and a period of incarceration of up to 10 years in the state penitentiary. You may be required to pay restitution to any victims of the crime. count 2, 3, 4, and 5 for first-degree murder, the consequences include a fine of up to $50,000, a period of incarceration of life imprisonment, which is a requirement of a sentence, that it be a life sentence with a mandatory minimum sentence of at least 10 years on each of those counts. In addition, you would be potentially responsible for a fine of up to $5,000 to each of the victims of your crime, to be enforced in the form of a civil judgment, to operate as additional punishment. This is in excess of any restitution or fines that the court could order. And again, you may be required to pay restitution to the victims of the crime. You would be required to provide, as to counts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, a DNA sample and a right thumbprint impression, and potentially pay for analysis of those samples. You would lose any right to possess, purchase, or carry a firearm, the right to serve on jury duty, the right to hold public office, and the right to vote. Do you understand the charges and all those possible consequences?
Yes.
You've heard the plea agreement that I talked about today. Do you agree with that plea agreement?
Yes.
And do you understand the nature of the charges that you've been charged with, that I understand you're going to plead guilty today to?
Yes.
As I indicated, I'm not bound by the plea agreement, but the plea agreement is for the maximum on each count. Do you understand that I'm not bound by the plea agreement?
Yes.
Has anyone promised you that I would be lenient or easy on you if you pled guilty?
No.
Has anyone threatened you or anyone close to you to get you to plead guilty?
No.
Is anyone other than the state's agreements with respect to the plea agreement, has anyone promised you anything in exchange for your plea agreement?
No.
Has anyone told you to be untruthful in answering my questions today?
No.
Has anyone offered you a reward of any kind other than the plea agreement in order to get you to plead guilty today?
No.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
And counsel, obviously there have been a number of motions filed to suppress evidence in this case. Other than those filed, are there any other motions that you felt were available with respect to Rule 12?
No, Your Honor.
And Mr. Kohberger, you understand that by entering the guilty plea in this case, you would be giving up your right to appeal any decision this court made, as well as your sentence.
Yes.
Have you had enough time to decide whether or not to plead guilty?
Yes.
Are you pleading guilty freely and voluntarily?
Yes.
Given your choices, do you believe it's in your best interest to plead guilty?
Yes.
Have you discussed fully the matter of pleading guilty with your attorney, and are you satisfied with the advice you've received?
Yes.
Has your attorney advised you to your satisfaction about what your rights are, what your defenses may be, and what the possible consequences to you of your guilty plea are?
Yes.
Has your attorney done everything you've asked them to do?
Yes.
Are you satisfied with their representation of you?
Yes.
I have received a written guilty plea advisory questionnaire that is purported to be filled out by you. Did you fill that document out?
Yes.
Did you understand the questions that you answered in this document?
Yes.
And are the answers that are outlined in this document your answers?
Yes.
Are those answers truthful?
Yes.
Did you sign the document?
Yes.
And this document outlines many of the rights that you have in this case. Should you not plead guilty, did you understand those rights?
Yes.
They include a right to a jury trial. Do you understand that?
Yes.
They include a right to the presumption of innocence. Do you understand that?
Yes.
They have the right to require the state to prove your guilt as to each element beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand that?
Yes.
They include a right to confront your accusers and cross-examine witnesses presented by the state, including by utilizing the subpoena power of the court to accomplish that. Do you understand that?
Yes.
You understand you would have a privilege against self-incrimination and a right to remain silent, meaning you would not be compelled to testify if you did not wish to, had you not pled guilty.
Yes.
You understand you're giving up that privilege and those rights that I've just outlined by pleading guilty.
Yes.
All right, I want you to understand what the state would have had to have proven at trial had you, to the crimes that you're pleading guilty to, had you, if you didn't plead guilty. Let me find the document. Hang on a second here. All right. So as to count one burglary, the state would have to have proven that on or about November 13, 2022 in Latah County, Idaho, you unlawfully entered a residence located at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder. As to count two, the state would have had to have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogan, from which she died. As to count three, the state would have had to have proven that on that same date in Latah County, at that same address, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died. As to count four, the state would have had to have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died. And then as to count five, also murder in the first degree, that on or about November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being, by stabbing him, from which he died. Do you understand those things the state would have had to have proven?
Yes.
And do you understand that by pleading guilty, the state no longer has to prove those things because you're admitting those things are true?
Yes.
I want to also make for the record, the defendant has provided with the guilty plea advisory form a document entitled Written Factual Basis that purports to have the defendant's signature dated 1 July 2025. Did you sign that document?
Yes.
And did you agree with the written factual basis that is included there?
Yes.
And then let me ask you, did you, on November 13th, 2022, enter the residence at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder?
Yes.
Did you, on November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
Did you, on or about that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
And did you on that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
And then on or about November 13th, 2022, again in Latah County, Idaho, did you kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being?
Yes.
Did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
I would ask the state at this time to provide its recitation of its factual basis had this case gone to trial.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, the organization of the recitation is different than what I think the court and the public may be familiar with from the probable cause affidavit and other documents. The state's evidence as an overview would show that back in March of 2022, when the defendant was residing in his parents' residence or was residing back in Pennsylvania, his home state, he purchased online a K-bar knife and sheath with an Amazon gift card that he had purchased shortly prior to the purchase of the knife, sheath, and sharpener. Jumping ahead, the end of June of that year, the defendant, Mr. Kohberger, moved from Pennsylvania to Pullman, Washington, which is right across the state line from Moscow, Idaho, for the purpose of pursuing a PhD in criminal justice at Washington State University. The state's evidence would indicate that beginning July 9th of 2022, Mr. Kohberger's phone began connecting to a cell tower that serves the area of the 1122 King Road residence in Moscow, Idaho. Now, I will acknowledge for the court and all present that there are many residences in that area. It's a dense population of mostly college-related occupants. Between July 9th of 2022 and November 7th, the defendant's phone connected to that particular tower during late night, early morning hours, 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. on approximately 23 times. Now, I will acknowledge also, we do not have evidence that the defendant had direct contact with 1122 or with residents of 1122, but we can put his phone in that area on those times. In the interim, on August 22nd of 2022, Latah County Sheriff's Deputy Darren Duke conducted a traffic stop in the early morning hour or late evening hours, about 11 p.m. On the west side of Moscow, on the Moscow-Pullman Road. This was a traffic stop of Mr. Kohberger's car, which turned out to be a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plates. During the course of the traffic stop, Deputy Duke was able to obtain Mr. Kohberger's name, Bryan Kohberger, his phone number, and his address, which at that point was an apartment address in Pullman. We then move to the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022. The state's evidence would show that early morning hours on that day, Mr. Kohberger's phone left his Pullman residence, which is an apartment in kind of the central northwest part of Pullman. That phone was then subsequently turned off at approximately 2:54 a.m. and remained off until approximately 4:48 a.m. on Sunday, the 13th of November. The state's evidence would include a trial, video surveillance of a business on the Moscow-Pullman Highway, just across the state line from Moscow. It would show a vehicle matching the description of the defendant's Hyundai Elantra entering Moscow at approximately 3:02 a.m. Compiled surveillance that the investigators put together from businesses and residents then show the defendant's car, the white Elantra, as I've described, circling the 1122 King Road area, that neighborhood, starting around 3:30 or so in the morning. Comes into the immediate area of 1122 King Road, which is actually on a dead end, and then leaves several times. And approximately 4:05 that morning, the defense car had entered that area, was leaving, stopped at the intersection of King and Queen Road, did a U-turn, and the state's evidence would show that the defendant's car came back and parked behind and above the two King Road residents. The state believes that its evidence would then show that the defendant entered the residence of 1122 through the kitchen sliding door on the back side of the residence, which is the side of the residence that would face the area above where the defendant's car was parked. Defendant entered the residence, went to the 3rd floor, and with a knife, killed Madison Mogan and Kaylee Gonzalez. The defendant, as he left that room, for whatever reason, ended up leaving, or the sheath for a K-bar knife was left on the bed next to Madison Mogan's body. And I can jump ahead. That sheath was tested by the Idaho State Police Forensic Lab, and single source male DNA was found on the snap of that sheath, as well as blood from both Kaylee and Madison and other trace evidence. But it's important to note single source male DNA was on the snap of that sheath. The state's evidence would show that Xana was still awake at this time. In fact, had taken a DoorDash order not long before this started. Her room was not on the 3rd floor, it was on the 2nd floor on the west side. As the defendant was either coming down the stairs or leaving, he encountered Xana, and he ended up killing her, also with a large knife. Ethan Chapin, Xana's boyfriend, was asleep in their bedroom, in her bedroom, and the defendant killed him as well with a large fixed blade knife. Each victim suffered multiple wounds. I will state for the record that there is no evidence there was any sexual component or sexual assault on any of the victims. I want to make that clear so there's no speculation. There were 2 other roommates in the house, and they were already asleep. During the course of this, one of those roommates awoke, looked out her door not knowing what was going on, and saw the defendant, who was dressed in black with black balaclava on, holding some sort of container in his hand. And she saw him leave the house through the direction of the kitchen to where that sliding door is that I mentioned before. At approximately 4:20 that morning, so this would have been 15 minutes or so later, defendant's car is seen on a surveillance camera for 1112 King Road, which is immediately next door to the west of 1122, leaving the area at a high rate of speed. And if the court were to see that, or anybody in this courtroom were to see that, you can see the car almost loses control as it makes the corner, heads north, and then turns to go south on Walenta, which is one of the only ways to get out of that part of town. The evidence would show that following that, the defendant in his Elantra drove south of Moscow. We know that he drove on the back roads because there are surveillance cameras on the main highways, Highway 95, that would have picked up the defendant's car if he'd gone that route. And they did not show the defendant's car on that route during the time. So we know that he went through a variety of back roads in very rural, isolated part of Latah County. About 4:48 that morning, the defendant's phone comes back on. And the evidence will show that that phone was located south of Moscow, likely at a side road intersection with Highway 95. From there, the defendant's phone activity tracks heading back north towards Pullman, Washington, where the defendant lived. About 5:26, starting approximately 5:26, various surveillance cameras in Pullman, Washington pick up the defendant's vehicle as he enters Pullman from the south and heads north and slightly west towards his apartment, where he arrived at approximately 5:30 in the morning. Later that morning, Sunday, the 13th of November of 2022, Mr. Kohberger's phone returned to the area of King Road. We don't know exactly what he did, but it returned to that area. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning. He was there for about 10 minutes and then returned to his Pullman residence. About 9:30, the state's evidence will show, evidence taken from the defendant's phone, that he took a selfie of himself on his phone in what appears to be the bathroom of his Pullman apartment with a thumbs up. The defendant's phone then went to the Lewiston-Clarkston Valley, approximately 30 miles south of Moscow and Pullman. And the defendant is actually seen with his car at various businesses down there. This area is the confluence of the Clearwater River and the Snake River. Lewiston is Idaho's seaport. Large bodies of moving water down there. In addition to tracing the defendant's activities, as I've just outlined on the 13th and leading up to the 13th, the state's evidence will show that following Sunday, November 13th, 2022, business records show that the defendant began searching for a K-bar knife and a K-bar knife sheath, as the state believes, to replace the one that was left at the scene of the murders. The evidence also will suggest that there were at least attempts by the defendant to delete or alter his purchase history on Amazon, where all these transactions had occurred. Later that week, the state's evidence will show that Mr. Kohberger went to what we would call DMV, motor vehicle licensing here in Idaho, in Pullman, to change his car registration from Pennsylvania to Washington. That's of note because Pennsylvania cars do not require a front license plate. The vehicles seen on the surveillance cameras of the defendant's car showed it didn't have a front license plate on it. At the time of the traffic stop by Deputy Duke in August, it was Pennsylvania plate, no front license plate. Mr. Kohberger proceeded to finish his semester of studies at Washington State University and returned to Pennsylvania for the holidays. Law enforcement at this point were aware of Mr. Kohberger, had been accessing information about him, were trying to find him. They located him in Pennsylvania, and they conducted what's called a trash pull. During the nighttime hours, agents of the FBI, who assisted immensely with this case, working with the sanitation department back in this neighborhood in Pennsylvania, took trash that had been set out on the street for collection, sent the contents of that from the Pennsylvania residence of the defendant's parents to the Idaho State Forensic Laboratory, where the lab experts there were able to identify DNA on a Q-tip as coming from the father of the person whose DNA was found on the knife sheath that was next to Madison Logan's body in the bed. Subsequently, an arrest warrant was issued here in Idaho, and a search warrant was issued in the state of Pennsylvania with the assistance not only of the FBI, but the Pennsylvania State Police. Mr. Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home to return to Idaho. Upon his return to Idaho, a DNA sample was taken from him, and it matched the DNA found on the knife sheath next to Maddie's body at the crime scene. I can tell the court, and the public, the weapon itself, the knife, has not yet been recovered. I can tell the court that the defendant's apartment in Pullman was searched, as well as his office. Spartan would be a kind characterization. There was virtually nothing there. Nothing of evidentiary value was found. And of course, we are now talking 6-8 weeks after the time of the killings. In Pennsylvania, the defendant's car was seized, and it was actually pretty much disassembled internally. And it also had been cleaned. There was a bucket of cleaner right beside it. I think we can all look to our own cars, you know, in those compartments in the doors. You can try to keep them clean where you put stuff. There's always some degree of crud in there. They were spotless. The defendant's car had been meticulously cleaned inside. And the state would present to the jury that that was part of the defendant's plan in covering up this. The defendant has studied crime. In fact, he did a detailed paper on crime scene processing when he was working on his pre-doctorate degrees, and he had that knowledge and skill. So, Your Honor, at the end, the state submits that the evidence that I've given just a quick overview of, and that to present in court would consume weeks, which the state is prepared to do and has been prepared to do, would show that as the defendant has just admitted and pleaded guilty on November 13th, 2022, excuse me, Mr. Kohberger entered the residence at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. He did that with the intent to kill. We will not represent that he intended to commit all of the murders that he did that night, but we know that that is what resulted, and that he then killed intentionally, willfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice forethought, Maddie Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Xana. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, based on the state's proffer and importantly, based upon defendant's explicit admission to committing these crimes, the court finds there is a factual basis. Therefore, with respect to count 1, burglary, felony, how do you plead, Mr. Kohberger, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 2, murder in the first degree, as it relates to the murder of Madison Mogen, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 3, as it relates to murder in the first degree for the murder of Kaylee Gonzalez, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 4, the first degree murder of Xana Kernodle, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 5, the first degree murder of Ethan Chapin, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Right. The court will find that the defendant understands the nature of the charges and each offense and the possible consequences to him of his guilty plea. Court finds that there is a factual basis for the plea and that finds the defendant believes the plea to be in his best interest. I find that the plea was given freely, voluntarily, and was intelligently made. I accept the plea. I direct that it be entered. I'll continue the matter for sentencing in this case. I think it was mentioned on the call Monday afternoon, the defense wishes to waive a pretrial investigation. Is that accurate?
Yes, Your Honor.
The state also?
Yes, Your Honor, the state does not believe pre-sentence investigation is needed, given the evidence that is available. We want to, though, make sure that all of the victims have the opportunity to make statements to the court at sentencing.
Absolutely. And certainly both the state and the defense may present whatever sentencing memorandum and other documents you wish me to consider. The victims will be given an opportunity to provide the statements that they wish to at sentencing. Do we need more than 1 full day for sentencing?
I do not believe so, Your Honor. Obviously, we have numerous victims, and we have victims who share unique perspectives on this, and we want to make sure that they all have time to express their feelings to the court. But I believe that if we can start perhaps 8:30 or so in the morning, that we should be able to complete it all in 1 day.
Defense agree with that in terms of the time frame?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. So as it happens, we have some time reserved in this case in July and August. The week of July 22nd is available. I don't know if that's too soon for the parties or the next week, the week of August 4 is available. Any preference?
Your Honor, we're prepared as soon as the court wants to schedule it.
The state, I believe, would be prepared on the 22nd. We've told the victims' families that we're looking at approximately those dates.
All right. So because of the plan to bring in so many jurors to fill out questionnaires, I had ordered that no other trials could take place in this courthouse the week of July 22nd. And so we will use that in terms of the sentencing date because of what I'm sure will be the significant interest of the media and the public and the logistics that will be required to make that happen. Without trials going, it'll be a lot easier to do that. So let's pick that week. Why don't we pick July 23rd with the idea that if for some reason we don't finish, we could continue into the 24th. We'll start at 9 in the morning. Does that give your team enough time, Sandra? 9 in the morning? All right. Any concerns with that date?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
No, sir.
All right. any reason why I should not rescind the non-dissemination order at this time?
Your Honor, I think that given the history of this case, it would be best if that remained in place through sentencing. So we have time to make sure there's the ability to completely answer questions. That would be the state's preference and recommendation.
We'd have no objection for the order to remain in place through
All right,
sentencing.
I will, at this point, the idea to keep it until sentencing, which time it would be withdrawn in order to give the parties the space and time to prepare to meet what I'm sure will be the deluge of media requests. That's at least my preliminary decision at this point. We can always revisit if it seems to be, for some reason, I should. That said, obviously, I don't think the defendant, a bond was ever set for the defendant. Were it, it would be revoked. The prior order allowing him to come in civilian clothes is revoked, given his plea and no longer the presumption of innocence. And in fact, now the actual conviction for the crimes. He will continue to be held at the jail pending sentencing. Is there anything else today?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
I assume that the trial date will be vacated
trial
and those
is-
4 jurors will be released.
The trial will be vacated, and I'm sure that the jury commissioner will get word to those that receive their summons that they won't be required to attend. So
Thank you, Your Honor.
that said, again, if you would all please wait for the parties and the victims' families and others to leave the courtroom before you do, I would appreciate it. And with that, we're adjourned.
All right, please.
Okay, we will be looking now to see if we're going to watch family victims arrive while people go outside, and then we're going to look to see if anybody is making any statements. So let's watch that together. Let me move myself. Okay. I'm just going to be, let's watch the families. Let's see who is there.
Joins us live in Boise. Bryan, you have also been covering this truly from the very beginning, and we just saw 2 of the victims' families walk into the courthouse.
Yeah, that's right, Nicole. And you mentioned some of the families not being happy, especially the Gonzalez family. Kaylee Gonzalez, one of the victims, her parents are just livid. They actually just showed up here about 5 minutes ago. Steve Gonzalez, Kaylee's dad, walked the family to the front door. It was Kaylee's mom and her siblings. And then Steve decided to leave. He said he just cannot be in the same room today with Bryan Kohberger. It is just too much. And as he was leaving, he said, prosecutors made a deal with the devil. So he is angry. He is hoping that maybe somehow this won't happen. But all indications are the plea deal has pretty much been signed off on, and the judge is going to go along with it. The hearing will be starting soon.
So we just watched the hearing. We're just looking to see if there are family members who arrived. We know that Bill Thompson did gesture to Bryan Kohberger's parents. I don't know if they were caught on camera or if they were brought in a side door, but let's see who arrived. And then we're going to look to see if anybody stopped to make statements on their way out.
Ethan Chapin, another one of the victims, Nicole, his family also just showed up here within the last half an hour.
There they are.
His mom, Stacy.
So there's Stacy there. She's in the middle with the strap across her chest and the gray shirt.
His dad, and then his siblings. Remember,
and then you can see his twin siblings. This is his sister Maisie and his brother Hunter. And it looks like not only is Hunter Chapin here, but I also see Hunter Johnson with the family.
he was one of triple.
Yep, there's Hunter Johnson and Emily are there. Emily Allant.
So
and it looks like Josie is there as well.
His siblings were here. Just terrible to see them all going in, thinking about what an emotional day this is for them. But they are supportive of the plea hearing. So they have a different take than the Gonzalez family They are ready to move on. They did not feel like the death penalty had to be on the table, and they just sort of want to put this behind them. Nicole?
And just seeing there, mentioning the fact that Ethan was a triplet, and you can tell, I mean, his brother looks so similar to him. Bryan, this has really been such a long legal road, such a process for these families. Talk about it. Walk us through. I mean, we're talking delays.
So I'm going to let this play through, and while this is going on, you're going to see me moving around a little bit. I'm just looking to see if anybody's making a statement
Appeals change
after the
venue
trial.
even more.
Oh, it's been long. I mean, it's been 2.5 years, Nicole, which is one of the things that the families are so frustrated with, that they've been sort of strung along for 2.5 years. There's been the gag order. They haven't gotten much information. They were promised that there would be a trial. It was moved from Moscow, Idaho. The families, most of them wanted it to stay in Moscow, which is the other side of the state where the murder happened. It was moved here to Boise. They were having to travel back and forth. They made plans to be here for 3 months, starting in August when the trial would start. And then came this news about a plea deal, which really came out of nowhere. I never heard any rumblings of a plea deal. The prosecutors, from everything that I could tell, and I've been at every hearing, were intent on taking this to trial and going after the death penalty. And it seemed like the defense wanted a trial too. And what happened is on late Friday, I started to hear rumblings that these negotiations were beginning. And by Monday, we learned that the defense had agreed to the deal, 4 life sentences, no possibility of parole, no possibility of appeal, but the death table is off the table for Bryan Kohberger. The death penalty is off the table for Bryan Kohberger.
And Bryan, as you said, this came as a shock to so many, and including the victims' families. What reasons did prosecutors give for offering this deal?
Yeah, so they gave a number of reasons, and I was looking over all the documents that have gone back and forth. Among them are the fact that there's risk involved in a trial, even though they felt that their case was strong, the possibility of a mistrial, the possibility that the families could have to go through this all over again if there had to be a second trial. Also, death row in Idaho is a long process. There are people on death row here in Idaho who have been there for 30 and 40 years. So the prosecutors told the family, look, even if we take this to the end and we get the conviction and then the jury, it has to be unanimous, signs off on the death penalty, it will be appeal after appeal after appeal. And you will have to come back to court over and over again for decades. And you will never be able to put this behind you. And they said, look, at least this way, he accepts guilt. He pleads guilty. He admits that he did this. And everybody can move on. But again, for some of the families, they said the only way they felt like they could move on was the death penalty.
Yeah, and it is so important to remember the victims in all of this, the families of those victims. But Bryan, I do have a question about Kohberger, the defendant, the man accused in all of this.
Okay, so it looks like the only family members that we got to see arrive are actually, I'm looking to see if there's anybody else that's being shown here. I don't see anybody else. It seems like the only ones that were willing to get on camera were the Chapin family. And I'm just looking to see if anybody is making any statements. So I'm just checking around on a couple of sites to see if anybody is going to talk after this. Is anybody going to come and talk to the media?
The families leaving the courtroom right now, and you can see as they walk out that there is, of course, a lot of media out there as well, capturing these images of them leaving the courtroom. No doubt a very difficult day for the families, whether they agreed with the plea deal.
I'm just going to back it up a little bit so we can see the families leaving. Okay, there we go.
There was no evidence of incompetency. Clearly, he was competent to stand trial, to enter the plea today. The court did a great job of making a record that this is a constitutionally sound decision, the one that will hold up on appeal. You may have even heard the court made inquiry of the defendant's attorneys about their investigation and all the rest. What that does is inoculates the record about any future claim of ineffective assistance of defense counsel. So that was good to hear. But as far as who spoke, it was mainly the prosecuting attorney speaking about the facts. It wasn't the defendant, who simply at least according to my notes, simply entered a cold yes to everything.
Which
And I think this is, what one of the things that the family members were so concerned about. They do want to know from Bryan Kohberger, where is the knife? What was your motivation?
may have been a disappointment to the victims' families. And I just want to let our viewers know that we have team coverage for you on what's happening in Boise, Idaho right now. We have crews on the ground there. We are waiting for our reporter to get outside of the courtroom to be able to bring you some live images of what's happening outside the Ada County.
I'm just going to move ahead to that part.
We're seeing the family of Kaylee Gonzalez.
Okay, we can see the
So
Gonzalez
there was
family
a lot of
coming.
discussion about who committed the crimes, but we have no answers about why.
And Judge, right now we're seeing the family of Kaylee Gonzalez leaving the courtroom right now. They have been pretty vocal about their displeasure in what has happened this week, not only that plea deal and the fact that Bryan Kohberger was going to accept this plea deal, but also displeased with the judge and the process, and they have been pretty discontent.
So please don't email or phone the judge. It sounds like things got out of hand with the emailing and the calling, and he started referring some of these to law enforcement, you guys.
So you can only hope that our hearts go out to them and hope that this begins that healing process. So now there's been a finding of guilt that should provide some imperfect solace.
Room right now, and you can see as they walk out that there is, of course, a lot of media out there as well capturing these images of them leaving the courtroom. No doubt a very difficult day for the families, whether they agreed with the plea deal or whether they...
And I'm just checking to see, did anybody stop to talk?
Intent, the motive.
It doesn't
the
look like
whys.
it.
So you have the who, but you don't have the why. And I bet you that's the main thing that the families want to know.
Yeah, I think the families do want to know why. Why did he do this? So, but pretty much everything that Bill Thompson went through. Now, we didn't get, all the details of everything. We, still haven't seen the body cam footage. There's a lot of stuff we haven't seen yet, but we still got the overview of what Bill Thompson gave, which was just an overview of the case. To me, it looks like we pretty much had everything correct, and that a lot of this was already available to the public. So I think that's, very helpful to know as well. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. I'm just going to pull this up really quick. I would like to know some of the questions.
Was alleged.
Some of the questions I have is I want to know if, was Bryan Kohberger, and I would love it if you would drop me questions in the comment section below. I would like to know if Bryan Kohberger was Papa Roger. That's one thing I would like to know. I would like to know if he was inside looking. I would like to know if he had whose ID was inside the glove, inside the box. I'd like to know who the animal hair linked back to. There's just a lot we still don't know. We did hear that the apartment was sparse, that he had probably meticulously cleaned everything. We know the shower curtain was even gone. And we saw in the thumbs up photo that there was a shower curtain hanging. But, there's still so much information we don't know. I think we got a sense of the order of how things happened, and it was pretty much what we thought. I'm just watching my words here. But there's still a lot of information that we just don't have yet. I do want to say we're not done yet, but I just do want to say thank you to our producers, Njaz, Sasha Angel, George Brown, and Christy Valentine. And thank you to our channel members. We had quite a few new channel members this month. We have had a lot of gifted channel memberships, and that's one of the nice things of coming up into the top chat and talking to me. Now, a lot of people think that the case is over now, and I think it's only the beginning of the end. And what I mean by that is there's still going to be all of the discovery to go through on this case. We have not seen the body cam footage from when law enforcement arrived on the scene. We have not seen any of the crime scene photos. We don't know about the van's shoe print yet. there's just so much information that we don't have. If you are a new channel member and you did not see your name there, please double check it, like watch it a couple, like one more time, but let me know so I can add you. I am not perfect. I could make mistakes, and I would much rather have you tell me and than me just try to guess. I also want to do super thanks and coffee gratitude from our last live stream. Thank you so much for your kindness and for the gifted channel memberships. Thank you so much to each and every one of you. I'm really grateful. Brother Mike, Donna Bravo, Texas Life Julie, Joe Ellen, Bracken, Tobias Davison, Njaz, Six Sense Amelia, Patricia Warner, Leon Littlejohn, and Marco Benavides. And I also want to thank Texas Life Julie, Jenny Lang, and Allison Cosgrove. All right, so I'd love to see if you guys have any questions. I don't want to just like end this, or you have any thoughts that you would like to share. This is, going to be just like the Chris Watts video of when he, we'll have the sentencing still to go. But just like in the Chris Watts case, this particular video will live forever. So if you want to, in fact, I'll show comments on the screen today. I don't usually do this, but I will post these. Go ahead and try dropping a comment and let's see if it shows up. Yeah, see, so we will do that. And I just want to say thank you to Annette Love for the $5 super sticker. Thank you so much, Annette. That is so nice of you. I'm putting that toward a camera for the channel. And thank you to Njaz for another gifted channel membership. That is so nice of you. Thank you so much, Njaz. And if our mods would come down and drop a comment, I would love to say thank you to our mods, Barbara Young, Dabs, our head mod, Six Sense Amelia, head mod, Njaz, head mod, Brother Mike. Yeah, we don't know. Thank you for modding today, Christy and Dabs and Donna. Thank you so much, Tara and Njaz and Holly. Thank you. Whoop, it's just flying by now. Thank you so much to Patricia. Patricia said, was it Bryan Kohberger's trash? It belongs to Bryan Kohberger's dad. So thank you, Las Vegas girl. I'm looking for mods right now. I am going to take questions. I'm just looking for mods. If mods will drop me a question or a comment, I'll definitely want to just tell you guys. Thank you so much. What a great group. Yeah, we had a really classy chat today. Thank you so much for being so classy. Thank you for modding today, Donna. So thank you so much to everybody who modded today. So let's go through your questions. And your comments. They're now appearing on the screen. So if you want to type something, it will live on this video. And this is probably one of the biggest days in the Bryan Kohberger case. It's the beginning of the end. We still have his sentencing. And at that time, will we learn more at the sentencing? And we will get to hear the victim impact statements. This is when we will get to hear from Stephen Christie Gonzalez. This is when we will get to hear from the Mogans. This is when we will get to hear from the Kernodle family. This is when we will get to hear from the Chapin family. Jackie says, since it was stated as premeditated, does that mean he knew all 4 victims were there? It sounds like it. That's a great question. And I'll be I'll be writing these down. If you drop them in the comment section below, I'll be trying to make a list so that we can, dig into everything and find out and answer these questions. Orange suit from now on. Yeah, at the sentencing, since he's pled guilty, he should be, if it's like the Alex Murdaugh case. Now, Alex Murdaugh didn't plead guilty. He was found guilty, but he should be in an orange jumpsuit. You're right, Vicki. So Bryan Kohberger just to go through this really quick, he does not have the right to appeal this decision. The court could order restitution, which means and fines for the victim. So that means if he did somehow get any money, that they would go toward the victims' families and not in his pocket. I'm relieved to hear that. Betsy says, Bill Thompson says the car interior was practically disassembled with a bucket next to it. Yeah, that was I mean, I don't know if we were like that shocked because law enforcement, when they had him under surveillance, said that they watched him meticulously cleaning the car. That's the other thing I'd like to hear is the state, hey, I would have been helpful to have a trial, but we will get more on discovery. We will get a lot more information. We will find out what the officers saw when they were under surveillance, when they had him under surveillance. Thank you, Barbara, for modding today. Las Vegas Hills, thank you so much for joining Jessica in Reporter Room. And history says judge cannot wear regular clothes anymore. Sheriff said BK wasted our taxpayer money and Taylor wasted taxpayer money. Not until the DoorDash driver saw him at the crime scene. He knew he was cooked. Rest in peace to the victim. So sad this happened. One question I have is why? And my theory, and this is just my theory, is that it was incel, that it was related to being an incel. That's what I think. Let me know if you have a different take on it. DE says, Ryan, they don't think he meant to unalive Ethan and Xana. Subpoena says, I will join on Friday. I am broke. Oh, that's okay. Subscribing helps me too, and that's free. So please don't ever worry. Don't give up, food or medicine or anything like that. We don't know, Kim, whose ID Bryan Kohberger had, but that's a question that I have. I want to know whose ID it was inside the glove, inside the box. So a lot of more information. The gag order is still in place for right now. Once the sentencing is done, the gag order will be lifted. And that's when we're going to get to see Bill Thompson probably do some interviews and Taylor do some interviews. We'll get to see Officer Brett Payne and some of the other responding officers do some interviews. Hopefully I will be able to get some of them onto this channel. Evelyn said, did I hear correctly that they said he drove back to the area of the house later in the morning? Yeah, he drove back a little after 9 a.m. and looky-looed. Yeah, you heard it correctly. It is a great group. You're right, Mike. Veronica said, if they release all of the discovery, will we be able to read it? Absolutely. We'll be going through it on this channel. They are going to release everything. They're just, they're going to wait until the sentencing. And it's probably going to take us a couple of months to go through. If you think about 12 hours of raw footage, it's going to take us some time to go, just the video footage, but 63 terabytes of information, whatever they decide to give to us. There's a couple things I'm not going to share on this channel. I just want to put this out there. I'm not sharing any photos of the victims. I just don't think that's right. I know some people do like to see that stuff, and I'm sure there'll be other people that will do that. I don't feel comfortable doing that. So I won't be doing that. If those are released to the public, I hope they're not. But I won't be sharing any of those. Other than that, I will be sharing everything else. Texas Life Julie says, marking the 23rd on my July calendar. Yeah, I have it too. Marion says, Steve Gonzalez requested emails or phone calls on his Facebook page to request the judge not accept the plea deal. Right. But the judge said today very clearly, do not email him. Do not call him. It was just that he found it. He wasn't going to be swayed. He's going to follow the law. He's not going to follow public opinion. That's what he said. He's going to follow the law in this case. He's bound by the law. And it is within the prosecution's discretion to offer this plea deal or to accept. My understanding is the defense went to them trying to get a plea deal. And whether you agree with it or not, it's done now. The plea deal is done. Bryan Kohberger has pled guilty. The only thing left now is sentencing. And the judge, for the people who have, repeatedly come in and said, well, he's being forced to do it. The judge addressed all of that. He asked, is anyone forcing you to do this? Bryan Kohberger said, no. Has anyone made you any promises in exchange for doing this? Bryan Kohberger said, no. So Bryan Kohberger did this of his own free will. He pled guilty. And in my opinion, what I think the tipping point was, and we won't know for sure until Ann Taylor is out from under the gag order and she can tell us. But what I think the tipping point was a couple of things. I think it was the fact that his phone calls to his parents came out on the Dateline interview. If I would have, and the subpoenas went out, and his family was being called by the prosecution to testify. And if that flight that his father that took him out from Albrightsville to Pullman, Washington, was made after that phone call, or within 24 hours of that phone call, I think that would have been just, hugely embarrassing for the family. So although I don't think Bryan Kohberger feels any empathy or remorse for the victims, families, or the victims, I do think that he might have agreed to do this for his own parents. He said he knew his father was a good man. This is when he was a teenager, but he didn't feel anything for him. So, I think that was him as a teenager, when he was on the Tappa Talk talking about the visual snow. Thank you so much, Barbara. Dab says, don't forget to give this a thumbs up. And we don't know about the dog hair yet. I mean, there's just a lot we don't know. So we still have a lot to dig into. DE said, that's why I said DM's very fortunate to be alive. Yeah, I think that had Dylan come, and for people can say what they want about the survivors. They didn't call 911 soon enough. There's no evidence that shows that had they called 911 sooner, that we've heard, that anything would have been different. In fact, Steve Gonzalez says it wouldn't have made a difference. And he has seen more and knows more than we do. So I think that had she come out of her room and confronted Bryan Kohberger that night, I don't think she would still be here. Had Bethany come out of her room and confronted Bryan Kohberger, I think she would not be here. We would have an Idaho 5 or an Idaho 6. The other thing that I have heard is that Bryan Kohberger, remember we heard Bethany did see somebody. I saw it being reported out on News Nation also, or maybe it was Ashley Banfield, but she was reporting, I don't remember if it was her personal channel or News Nation, but she reported that Bethany did see someone taking things off and dropping them into a bag. So I just thought that was good. A lot of what we've been reporting out here on Reporter Room has lined up exactly with what the prosecution shared today and what we know so far. So the questions we still have are just some of the things. Was there any geofencing data on that cell phone, or was it just phone pings with the car lined up? I think they had enough for a jury to find him guilty, but you never know what a jury's going to do. You just don't know what a jury's going to do. And so maybe, the best thing the prosecution felt like was to just go ahead and take this deal and have him plead guilty, but he would never be able to appeal it. And had he been found guilty, and whether he would have been sentenced to capital punishment or not, he still would have been able to appeal, and the appeals would have gone on for years, and the family members would have had to have continued to show up. So I understand why some families feel upset and let down, and I think a lot of it was the way that this was handled, that maybe family members should have gotten a personal phone call. I also understand that if you look at the Kubler-Ross stages of grieving, that one of the stages, and they don't come in order, but is anger. So I understand that as well. And I'm not minimizing or saying somebody did not have a right to feel angry about the way that they were handled. And I do feel like, and this isn't just a problem in Idaho, this is a problem, everywhere, that victims' families need to be taken into consideration, and in somehow we need to find a way to include them in the process, because what started to happen and what was happening was it just all became about Bryan Kohberger and his rights, which are important. We don't want somebody sentenced to capital punishment that didn't do it, but somehow the victims' rights have to be balanced with that as well. But yeah, I agree, DE. She's lucky she's here. Christine said, we don't know yet. We don't know. Betsy says, we won't find any details until the judge releases it. Yeah, we still have a gag order in place. Yeah, we want to know where the knife is. And maybe Ann Taylor will have some information on that. We did find out that the prosecution did not have the knife, which we thought. That's what we thought. We thought maybe, but we didn't think so. Aaron said, maybe. Thank you so much for the showing this. I'm happy I came across this live. Thank you for joining me today. It's Aaron. Anna said, ID, animal hair, other victims. Molly saw BK. And yeah, so I'm wondering if the eyewitness of the DoorDash driver, that also just happened, right? Ann Taylor didn't get the 4 perpetrators. She wanted the alternative perpetrators. Thank goodness they were going to implicate 4 innocent people. And I say they, I'm including Bryan Kohberger in that. So thank goodness that didn't, the judge didn't approve that. He told her she needed evidence, and but she did at least seal it. So in now knowing that he is, pleading guilty, I think it's good that she sealed it. So thank you for joining me today, David. Holly said this will only empower future BKs. I don't know. I mean, I hope that what future, because there's people who are sociopathic that don't commit any crimes. In fact, most don't commit any crimes at all. But what I hope is that people start to realize that even if you are a criminology major, even if you think you know everything, with all the cameras there are out there today, it's in the geofencing and the cell phone pings, it's really hard to get away with a crime like this. No, he didn't show any remorse or empathy. And I don't think he pled guilty to spare the families. I just don't. I think if he wanted to spare the families, he would have, pled guilty a lot sooner. He said pled guilty at the end. Maybe they found out about eyewitness Molly DoorDash driver at the same time that we did, and didn't realize that she saw Bryan. Ann Taylor may have seen her on the witness list, but didn't know what she was going to say. And they thought, oh my gosh, maybe we need to do something about this. So what kind of sentencing is next? Well, the judge is going to sentence Bryan Kohberger. And the family members are going to get to come up and make what's called a victim impact statement. Nicole says, this was interesting. Thanks for reporting. Thank you for joining me. No, you're right. No remorse at all. Yeah, Bryan Kohberger's parents were there. I did not see them. Nisha said, I'm not prepared for the victim statements. I understand it, but I do think we should watch them together. And you don't have to watch them at home alone. You can watch them here as part of the Reporter Room family. So we'll watch it together. And just like we did today, I will be quiet and just watch it with you and just type of, here and there in the top chat. And at least you're not at home, crying by yourself. Because I think that's going to be very, very emotional. Jaegerman says, where was Xana located? We don't know that yet. I mean, there's just so much, but that's a, great question. The car was practically disassembled with a bucket next to it. Yeah, let that sink in. He cleaned that car. I think he Dextered out the car. This is details we don't have. So this is, speculation on my part, but I think he Dextered out that car. He understood. We know from his how-to essay. He had weeks and weeks with the Hyundai Elantra, and Bill Thompson said he had practically taken the car apart. So he cleaned it. And Steve Gonzalez told us that he used lab chemicals. They believe it was from a lab at WSU. So he used professional chemicals to clean that car. Yeah, you're right, DE. We don't know yet. Royal says, did the prosecutor say Maddie and Kaylee? We don't know yet. There's these are all great questions. Please drop them in the comment section below. And one other thing I just want to say, if you're dropping me a comment, please don't use certain words. I say schmurder and, and unaliving. There's a reason. And when you guys use words like that, every so often it'll make it through the filter, but the majority of the time those will get stuck behind a filter. And I'm always afraid to publish them because I want to be respectful of the platform that I'm on. So we don't know the motive on this either, DLM. Holly said he'll have a fan base sending him money. Yep. Can the family sue for wrongful death? Yes, they can. The thing is, does he have any assets? Why didn't they ask where the knife was? I don't know. Aaron said, I wonder if he had intentions of taking out everyone but was too exhausted. Could be. So many so many unanswered questions. Well, I do want to say thank you to all of our mods. You guys are absolutely fantastic. Thank you to everybody who was so classy in the top chat. And thank you for coming by to spend a little bit of time with me. We will be watching the hearing on July 23rd. It will be 11 a.m. Eastern time here on Reporter Room. Please consider subscribing. And if there's any breaking news between now and then, any more leaks or anything like that, please hit the notification bell. I will be bringing it to you. But once we have this sentencing on July 23rd, which is just, less than 3 weeks from now, or right around 3 weeks, then we will be getting all of the gag orders going to be lifted, and tons of information is going to come pouring out on this case in 3 weeks. In the meantime, I am covering anything that leaks on this case. I will be covering between now and then. I have a feeling that there are people that know things that may want to get some information out there, out in front of the deluge of information. We may see some family members giving some interviews and stuff like that. But I will be continuing to cover this. I'm also covering the Lori Vallow Daybell case. I'm deep diving that on the back end. And as I shared with you guys that joined me for that live stream, I believe that Joe Ryan, Lori Vallow's third husband, was actually victim number 1 in the case. And I shared with you guys why I believe that. So please make sure you check that out. And I'll be continuing to cover Lily and Jack. And then if you have any preferences, of what cases you want me to cover. I saw a lot of people asking me to cover the Madeline Soto trial with Stephen Stearns, and I wasn't going to cover that one originally because I was going to be on this trial, but I can. If you guys would like me, I could air that trial on in its entirety. Betsy said they will release everything in the house but the images with the victim. Yeah, and if anybody acts, if I will never share those. Even if they release them, I would never share those. Holly says, we don't need to see the photos, but we should know the other details. Exactly. And so if in the event that those are released, I will not be sharing, I'll be sharing everything, but not any photos of the victims. Absolutely not. Red Cloud said, and he said it was premeditated. Yes, Bryan Kohberger said it was premeditated. They were all, the knife was used on all of them, you guys. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there. So hopefully this will put an end to the Bryan Kohberger is innocent. He admitted that he did it. So he's, I think he admitted to all 4 and did not say that anybody helped him. So there was no second person. And he also admitted that he burglarized the house. All right. So thank you so much for coming by to spend a little bit of time with me. And I will see you on the next one. Drop me in the comments below what questions you have so I can prepare my live streams accordingly.